But first, thank you all for coming to the opening. And it's always a pleasure. Each opening when I see people from community, we gather here, we celebrate our life. And David is my old friend, right? So this is actually his third show here. And
An old new friend.
he's a professor, not expired, retired. So he's retired from Rhode, and he was the chair of the painting department for quite a while. And he can tell you more stories about himself, but I really respect him, as I call him Henry Painter. And this show I put together both artists, the one outside and the one inside. I didn't realize this until I worked in the middle of the process. I realized I actually put two artists who both of them emphasize painting itself a lot. So I will talk about the outside artists later. And they both use improvisation, I would say, process. And then interesting thing is, their title is basically after they finish the painting, and musically, I'm sorry, I used probably the wrong word. If you can object, okay, if you don't mind. So put the title there. So don't try to really relate the title to the painting. So that is the outside artist also tell me that. And I don't want to read your whole resume. Of course, he's a great professor, and he's really interested in European painting and lived there, studied that, and of course, he also married Annika, who is from Poland. So you will see the tulip, that is their years of love, the symbol of that. So although he's improvising, but certain symbols you'll see like X, and he said he got this idea of using X, to represent life and vitality when they start to have children. And birds, you want to say something? I'm sorry, I'm taking this job now. So I will give you the podium if we have one.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
I don't know. Just tell me if this thing becomes annoying, okay? I'm used to speaking loudly, without a microphone, so I'll try to speak a little more quietly, and hope that I don't offend any ears.
The microphone away.
Well, let's see. Maybe it'll slow me down. That could be a good thing too. No, Dacia is right. I think I was your first real in-person show after the pandemic, here at Qualia, at the previous location, and so that was 2020 or, I assume 2021 maybe, and this is the third time I've shown here, and it's been a great pleasure for me because as an East Coast artist, I've always had an orientation primarily with Europe and with New England. But at the same time, I've had the tremendous opportunity since all my years in Rome teaching for RISD to, at the same time, travel and show a great deal in China. So that's been an incredible opportunity for me to see, also something that I've always loved, which is Chinese traditional Chinese steam painting. I took students of mine from RISD to Hangzhou, in 1989. It was literally 2 months before Tiananmen Square, and we spent January in Hangzhou freezing to death, everything was so cold, and with no heat and everything. I never took my coat off, and I had a cup of tea in my hands the entire time, not that I was drinking it, just to keep my hands from freezing, And so at any rate, and of course now to go back to Hangzhou is, which I've been back many times since, it's another world. It's another world. And it promises probably to be another world pretty soon too. But to the work. I've taught at RISD for 42 years. The pandemic came and I knew it was time to quit. So I am now Professor Emeritus of the Painting Department at the Rhode Island School of Design. The only thing I've done longer in my life is to be married to my wife for 55 years. Okay? Now to the paintings. Yes, Dacia is absolutely right. My process is improvisational. I have no designs, no idea about where and how a painting is supposed to go. I just start. I started with arbitrary kind of colors, shapes. Sometimes I pour the paint on, blot it, I take out my shop vac, I put it in reverse, I blow the paint around. I start to create a surface that's of interest to me. And once that surface starts to become more interesting, it starts to suggest where I might put some of the motifs that I've used for quite a few years, which are the birds, apples, eggs, flowers, and put these sort of generalized motifs, which they're not, I was talking earlier to some lovely women, here, that were asking me about this. This is poetry. Poetry is not a specific, definitive meaning, that the poet puts together and you are supposed to interpret according to their meaning. Instead, it has a generalized meaning. It pushes you in a certain direction, and you get to feel and think for yourself, as you look at the pieces that are here, for example. Because I'm an abstract painter. As a student, I was very fond of abstract expressionism. But at the same time, I knew that I had to find, as a modernist, I had the responsibility to find my own way and not somebody else's way. So I chose to start to make paintings that were more linear and more constructions and more kind of less about action, less about energy that is applied through the paint and the action of the paint, and instead to take what I was very, very fond of, which was collage, which I made a lot of when I was a student and several years after. I haven't done it in a long time, but in a way these are like collage in the sense that I choose to put things side by side, choose where it's going to go. I make bad choices. I cover them up, dig down, wipe them off, cover them up again, until everything starts to coalesce into something that makes sense to me, where color and action and the placement and the spatial illusions of the painting start to make some sort of sense. And that's when I start to feel like I'm coming to some possible resolution, in the painting. So you can see in a painting like this one, if it's possible to see, there's a spatial condition up here, which is more atmospheric, a background, if you would, a sky space, of which there's a horizon line that's suggested through here, tree forms, things like the tulip that pop up, into the space from there. There's suggestions of architecture, of actual buildings and urban things, wrapping, forms, that in here as well, placement of something like this apple, another kind of tulip. It might have started off looking like something more clear like this one, but then I decided to push it back and layer a screen of paint and color over it. Down here becomes the kind of foreground, again, very architectural, very blocky building and so on. So, but all of these things sort of happen during the process of the painting. Paintings are never, I take a long time painting any of them, but I never make a painting from start to finish without having other paintings happening at the same time. So because I don't know where they're going to go, and I'm very doubtful about whether it's working or not working, if doubt sounds like it's a weakness, but as far as I'm concerned, doubt is the strength of any artist who is doing something they're not sure of, okay? I don't think really good art is something that anybody should be making that they're sure is good art, you know, okay? You're doing something that's unique, that's individual. You have absolutely no idea who's going to care for it or not care for it, or say something about it or not say something about it. The doubt of working on the edge is really important. It's very important, you know. And so I don't really know when a painting is finished until I've lived with it long enough that I can't want to change any of it, you know. When I reach the point where I don't want anything to change, and that's usually over a couple of months, then I'm going to go, okay, I guess that's fine. I must be okay with this one, you know, okay? And by then I'm excited about other ones that are in process anyway, so, you know, so I'm moving on, you know. There's been a couple things I've really wanted to do as an artist, one of which is to never be bored, to get up every day. Another thing is to get up every day and want to paint, you know. And I go to bed at night sort of with the remnants of what I'd done during the day kind of sticking in my head and waking me up in the middle of the night and thinking I did a good job, and going down in the morning and thinking I didn't do a good job, and starting it again and changing it over and so on and so I'm never bored. I also never want to paint in a single fashion, in a single kind of language, you know, of painting, because that's another way of sort of holding me in a way to, rather than allowing me the freedom to say for one day, all I want to do is sit there and paint 3 eggs. You know, it's all I want to do that day. I'm free. That's what I want to do that day. The next day, I might want to splash some paint around, rip off what I did the day before, and start something else again. I get angry at myself for being so anal, you know, and then other times, you know, so, you know, it's moving, and it's an exciting and very anxious activity that I know Monica could attest to. The fact that it's not always a pleasure. You know, maybe I'm not even always a pleasure to live with, but you know, somehow she's managed to keep me. You know, but I've covered enough of the basis, okay? I think, all right? Does anybody have a question and want me to elaborate on it or anything? Yes.
I was fascinated by that whole thing about painting with doubt,
Yes.
and then it seems like you come to a kind of certainty eventually. And have you ever, I'm just curious, have you ever said, okay, I don't want to change anything, and then later, you know what, I think I do want to change this?
Oh yes, all the time. You know, you're right about certainty. One of the things I think that in art lingo, you know, is usually the notion of resolution. You know, you found resolution. You finally put all the pieces together in a way that they have resolved into something that sort of makes sense and seems inevitable. Okay. But that's so subjective, you know, that is so subjective. You know, on a given time, I've decided the painting is just fine. Weeks later, just fine, you know. And then I look at it a year later and I go, oh my goodness, why did I not do this instead, you know? Or I could add more color, I could take more color away from it, I could add more lines, I could put more, you know, does it have that kind of organization that I thought it had, you know, before? And often I'll go back and redo paintings. This painting in particular was an entirely different painting about 10 years ago. And then frankly, Dacia said, I want a painting that is less than 48 inches wide and tall, you know? That's your fault, you did it, you know? And so I went to my stacks and I found a painting that seemed about the right size. I said, well, I don't like that painting that much anymore anyway. So I started sanding this and taking it away. There's a lot in here that's from the original painting, but it's an entirely different painting, you know? And I have that feeling that I don't know if I'm ever going to buy another stretcher, you know, or stretch another canvas, because I have a few, just a few that I intend to continue to paint on. I've been going through paintings and taking them off stretchers and throwing them away in order to reuse the stretcher for another new painting, because the only thing I care about is to continue to do it till I can't do it, you know. Matisse, of course, is everybody's artist's great hero, in that he could be bedridden, lying on his back, and he's still drawing on the ceiling, you know, or something, you know. I don't think I want to do that, you know. But if it comes to it, I'll do what I can, you know. But doubt is something that I think artists have to have, you know. Doubt is not necessarily a good thing for everybody else, but it's something that's really good for artists. Anything else?
I actually found that there are eggs. You paint a lot of eggs in your painting.
Yes.
Can you tell me why?
Well, the paint, as an abstract painter, I think of paintings like music, okay? Music, you know, has stops and pauses, you know, it has connections that move it from one place to another. Claudia, who wrote a press release for this that I thought was really very good, said she described the paintings as having rhythm and rhyme and meter. Okay? Well, I thought, oh, that's great. That's exactly, rhythm is absolutely true. Rhyme is the repetition, you know, of images and colors and shapes. And meter is the measurement. Meter is the pace, you know, and so on. So that's really what it's about. The eggs are stopping points. They move in and out spatially. They let you decide to pause and move to something, you know, else. And then I think of symbolically the egg and the bird and the tulip and apples for sure. Well, I can go into apples, you know, on another way. But these things are all vulnerable. They're all fragile. All right. We live in a dangerous world. We need each other, we need our friends, we need to take care of each other, but this is a dangerous world, never more evident than it is right now. You know, in a country that thought it was past danger, you know, we are in a dangerous world, you know. And so the chaos and the movement of all of these things in the paintings, you know, surround these little creatures, you know, things that bloom and die and things that can be broken and serve, you know, and so on and so forth. And then there are the motifs that are art history motifs, the egg and dart in architecture, you know, apple, of course, is the great temptation in the Garden of Eve, you know. The first time I painted an apple, that's what I was thinking about. I was an abstract painter, a real abstract painter. You know, it wasn't my abstraction yet, but it was real abstraction. And I thought, oh, maybe I should paint something, you know. So I painted an apple. I said, boy, this is nice, this is fun. I like painting this apple. And then I started to think about it. It was like a sin, because you know, in the '60s, if you were a representational painter, you were considered to be dumb. Now that's no longer true, and I don't believe that now either. But there was a position in the '60s promoted by Clement Greenberg that, you know, real art had moved away from illustration, had moved away from storytelling, had moved away from illusion, you know. And so painting was a sin, to paint something, okay? And so I keep including sin, you know, in my work as well, you know, okay? Yes?
Yeah, I do have a question. So first of all, I really appreciate you are very open in sharing your experience behind what we can see
Right.
in the painting. I'm just so curious because somehow I see what you describe, your experience is reflected in reflection too of this painting. And I'm curious that do you think of the title first and then you paint, or the other way around?
No, absolutely not. The titles either are painfully chosen, or it's obvious to me what it's about when it's finally there. You know, I mean, a painting like this one, Urban Life. I mean, this painting it was absolutely clear to me as soon as I had settled into the notion that these architectural, this kind of urban landscape up here, with all of its atmosphere, with all of its pollution or suggested pollution, and the physicality of concrete, you know, and the illusions of objects and hidden and poking through, and then the last decision in this painting was to create a foreground, and it came to me that I could just create this other level of geometry that's suggested by these up here, but only I would do it in a clear and graphic way down here that would move it forward. And then that became urban. It was very clear to me it was urban. It didn't start out that way. I don't know what it started out as. Just paint, you know. I think of this one as reflection because it's not right side up and it's upside down. You know, there's a great deal that's on the bottom of the painting that's upside down from what's on top of the painting. And so when you see things reflected in water, they are the reverse of what's being reflected. So reflection, you know, and for maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had another painting that was called Reflection as well. So this is Reflection 2.
Okay.
All right.
Actually, my friend noticed there's some sign of blood,
Like blood
in the painting. So we kind of think like maybe the reflection, the process of reflection is kind of painful to a human being when we really want to do a reflection. So that's our interpretation. I'm not sure if this is.
I'm not going to contradict you because it's consistent with how I feel. All right? You know, again, as I said before, and I'll just say it again, it's very important that I don't start giving you a story that is specific to each painting and that only allows you then to forever to only think about what I said. When I'm doing something that I want you to continue to have one experience with and then later have another experience with and so on. And everybody that has lived with any of my work for a number of years will always tell me the same thing, and it pleases me no end. I've discovered new things in the painting that I'd never seen before, you know, and I think, well, just thank you, God, that's great, you know, because the last thing that I want is to have a painting that is done, complete, there, goes up on the wall, and you don't have to look at it anymore. You know, it looks nice with your sofa and the color of your, you know, curtains. You know, and therefore I don't have to look at it anymore because it's nice. You know, I don't want nice paintings. I want good paintings, but I don't want nice paintings.
It's a profound thing.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions?